When a poor boy plays piano for his humiliator, you won't believe what happened next. The crowd murmured, a wave of whispers covering the room like a thick fog. In the center, a spotlight pierced through the dim clamor, settling on a young boy, probably no older than 16. His hands, trembling like leaves during a storm, hovered over the keys of an old, upright piano. Dust motes danced in the air, swirling around him, as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting for the magic or the disaster to unfold. Everyone watched, decisive eyes locked on the boy they all knew, Davis, the poor kid with nothing but his dreams and this rickety instrument. But this was his moment. Just weeks before, Davis had been humiliated in front of the whole school, mocked for the ripped shoes he wore and the lunch he couldn't afford. Now, he stood before his tormentor, Jake, who lounged at the back, arms crossed and a smirk plastered across his face. Jake had no idea what was coming, and that was the beauty of it. The tension crackled in the air like a live wire, waiting for someone to take the plunge. With a deep breath, Davis pressed down on the keys, filling the room with a haunting melody. It was a sound that seemed to resonate with raw emotion, striking chords deep within the listeners' hearts. The music wrapped around them like a warm blanket on a cold night, stirring something fragile yet powerful. He poured his soul into the notes, channeling every painful experience into this performance, each strike expressing fear, sorrow, and ultimately, a twinge of hope. As the music crescendoed, Jake's smirk faded, replaced by confusion. What was happening? Each note hit with precision, a reminder that beneath the humble exterior was a fierce spirit, ready to rise. The crowd shifted, whispers turned to gasps, their hearts beating faster with curiosity. They hadn't expected this, not from him. The moment hung there, thick and heavy, and just as Davis prepared to launch into the climax of his piece, the fire alarm blared, slicing through the ambience like a knife. Panic erupted. People jumped up, chairs clattered, and screams filled the air. In the chaos, a girl in the front row dropped her phone, the screen cracking against the floor. Time froze for a heartbeat. What would happen to Davis now? Would he be swallowed by the chaos, or could he stand tall and face his fears? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The alarm screeched on, but as the crowd surged toward the exit, one thing became undeniable: everyone was looking for Davis. Would he flee, stop playing, or embrace his moment? As the noise reached a fever pitch, one last note lingered in the air, haunting and beautifully tragic. What would it mean when the dust settled and the chaos faded? Davis, the boy who had always been beneath their feet, stood at the potential precipice of triumph or disaster. What would happen next? The fire alarms wailed incessantly, drowning out the remnants of Davis's haunting melody. Choked gasps filled the air as chaos erupted around him. Bodies surged toward the exits in a swirling mass of fear. Yet, in the eye of the storm, Davis remained inexplicably anchored to the piano, heart pounding in his chest, fingers poised over the keys, a mix of determination and terror flickering in his eyes. What was he doing? Shouldn't he bolt like everyone else? As students pushed past him, he could hear fragmented conversations. Is this a drill? What if it's real? Panic charged the atmosphere, crackling with unpredictability. Davis felt consumed by the weight of the chaos, but a spark flickered inside him. This was his chance that he could feel Jake's gaze from the back of the room, the smirk gone, replaced by something darker. Davis was not just playing music, he was challenging the fear that had ruled his life for too long. A low hum of whispers began circulating through the panicking crowd. What's wrong with him? Why isn't he leaving? Davis inhaled deeply, the sharp scent of smoke mingling with the soft wood of the piano. He suppressed the urge to run and instead let the chaos fuel him. With each chord he struck, the frantic noise around faded away. He played with newfound fervor, pouring every ounce of repressed emotion into his performance, fingers dancing over keys. He transformed his fear into a powerful anthem of resilience. Notes soared, piercing the panic, creating an almost supernatural connection with those still in the room. For a fleeting moment, everyone stopped, turning back to him, captivated. The rhythm wrapped around them, binding their hearts in a way that only music could. One girl, tears streaming down her trembling face, slowly began to sway, lost in the melody. The room's energy shifted, becoming electric as more students paused, unsure of whether to flee or listen. Davis could see the confusion wrestle with awe in their faces. Each note resonated with a tale of struggle, everyone silently acknowledging their own battles hidden beneath layers of bravado, but just as the atmosphere began to transform, a sudden thud echoed through the chaos. Davis jerked his head back towards the entrance where he saw shadows darting in and out. A group of older boys, the school bullies, had burst in, faces twisted with malicious intent. Jake was among them, eyes gleaming with amusement and rage. "Look at you, Davis. Playing for your pathetic life? How sad." He taunted, the room holding its breath, anticipation tightening around them like a noose. Davis's heart raced not with fear, but with anger. He could either let Jake's words suffocate him or rise above them. The tension in the air thickened, an electric charge blending with his music, each note becoming a weapon against the bullying that had weighed him down for so long. Time stretched like a rubber band, and Davis knew this was the moment he had to seize. He played faster, louder, refusing to let Jake define him. But the question remained, could one boy with a keyboard truly stand against a lifetime of torment? As Jake began to laugh, a chilling sound that sliced through the hopeful notes, a sudden realization sparked in Davis's mind. This wasn't just about playing music anymore, it was a battle for his identity. One final crescendo beckoned, but would he have the strength to face Jake and the darkness of his past? The suspense lingered, thick and demanding, as everyone held their breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. What would happen when the music stopped? Davis's fingers flew across the keys, a blur of desperate energy. The piano heaved beneath his touch, alive with the furious swell of his emotions. Each note thrummed through the air, challenging the chaos that surrounded him. The classmates, caught between fleeing the fire and succumbing to his melody, stood frozen, the power of his performance momentarily edging out their panicked eye. In that charged moment, Davis locked eyes with Jake. The bully's expression shifted, amusement faded, replaced by something darker. Habitual cruelty morphed into uncertainty, but Davis felt only the boldness of his music. It streamed from his heart, igniting a spark in some of the onlookers. He was no longer just a victim, he was an artist wielding sound. But uncertainty crept in. A horrific crack echoed through the building, and suddenly, the lights flickered. The sight of a flickering fluorescent bulb sent a wave of dread rippling through the room. Davis's melody faltered for a split second. The whispers swelled, "What is happening?" Faces turned pale, fear threatened to engulf the fleeting hope he'd ignited only moments before. "Coward!" Jake shouted, cutting through the whispers like a knife. "You think you can save yourself with a song? Pathetic." Davis's stomach twisted at the word. But no. He wouldn't let Jake's taunt slip through the cracks of his determination. He forced his fingers back onto the keys, pain shooting through his palms, fighting the urge to falter. Confusion reigned, but he drew strength from the laughter that had long echoed in his memories. With a newfound urgency, he played harder, summoning an internal storm. The notes spilled forth, furious and raw, the kind of primal energy that could drown out even the fiercest of taunts. Around him, a few girls began to sway, while the tension shifted as more students gravitated towards the sound, captivated. Just then, the front doors swung open, a gust of smoke washing through the room like a wave. The older boys, sensing their moment, broke forward, their adrenaline fed by the turmoil. "Look at him. What a loser. One of them yelled, the challenge echoing against the walls thick with fear. In an instant, the audience shifted. Davis could feel their resolve somber as they looked at him not with pity anymore, but with growing defiance. The spell that his music had cast suddenly revealed the truth. It wasn't only about him standing against Jake, it was about all of them rising together. One girl thrust herself forward, defiant, "You're nothing but bullies." Her words pierced the tension like the notes of his piano. Support poured in from unexpected places, a collective strength rising against the boys in the doorway. "Yeah. Enough." Another voice shouted. Davis's heart surged with an incredible intensity. The music swelled, spiraling toward a fever pitch. But just then, a horrible crack grew louder, echoing through the hall, drowning out his climax. The ceiling tremored as dust fell from above, raising panic anew. Davis's thoughts whirled. Would this be the moment everything shattered? He glanced back towards Jake, whose sneer now bordered on rage. The world spun around them, fires roaring, lights flickering, chaos closing in. Davis could feel the mounting fear clawing at his throat, the sound threatening to drown his melody. Suddenly, Jake lunged forward, shoving one of the onlookers aside. Adrenaline surged inside Davis as he realized that the clash wasn't just inevitable, it was about to break. Would he finally stand tall, or would the anger of his past bring him crashing down? And as the first punch collided with the flurry of music, the room hung on the precipice of calamity. Everything felt poised for explosion. Was this the final showdown? The storm inside him swelled again, but this time, he wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. What would happen when the last note played? The punch landed, a sickening thud that shattered the moment. Time slowed as chaos erupted. Davis watched in horror as the ripples of violence spread, each move filled with desperation and fear. The music drowned in the rush of shouts and the heavy thuds of bodies colliding. "Get him!" Jake's voice boomed above the din, a rallying cry that stoked the flames of anger. Suddenly, there were fists flying, pushing and shoving, and students scrambling for safety. It was a tempest of confusion, the joy of solidarity swallowed by panic. Davis's heart raced, so loud he thought it might drown out the cries for help. He clutched the piano, fingers still hovering above the keys, uncertain. The music had drawn them together. Now, it felt like a stark reminder of their disarray. He was terrified, gripped by an overwhelming sense of dread. Would this end in bloodshed? A girl cried out, her voice trembling, "Stop it." But her plea was ignored, barely penetrating the swirling chaos. Davis felt the air thickening around him, a pressure building as he fought his instinct to flee. This was his moment, he had to reclaim it. Gathering every ounce of will, he pressed down on the keys. A single note rang out, sharp and clear, cutting through the cacophony. Some turned in surprise, startled by the sound. He played again, this time layering chords over the disarray. "Come on!" Someone shouted, their footfalls echoing as they sprinted to the piano. A boy, one of the silent ones, jumped beside him, face flushed but fierce. "We can't let it end like this." With renewed strength, Davis's fingers danced across the keys. The music rose and fell, a battle hymn of resilience. It connected with the terrified souls, each note became a pulse in their shared struggle. The melody seemed to wrap around them, drawing out a collective breath. "Let us go. Join us." The boy shouted, rallying those caught in the turmoil. Slowly, students began to push back against the tide of aggressors. The bullies faltered, confusion rippling amongst them as they stared at the collective. The strength of a united front was surging within those who once thought they had no power. With each thundering beat, the mood in the room shifted. Fear began to melt into defiance, as more students stepped forward. One by one they began to chant along with the music, lifting hands as if to ward off negativity. Davis was no longer alone at the piano, he was the heart of a movement, but suddenly, a piercing scream erupted from the back of the room. A girl fell, tripping and colliding with the chaos, her face a canvas of terror. Davis's heart constricted. This wasn't just brawling, this could lead to something much darker. "Look out!" Someone yelled, and all eyes turned to the doorway where a figure loomed, cloaked in shadows and smoke. It was too late for retreat now. The air thickened with tension so palpable that Davis felt it might choke him. What was this new threat? And could the fragile alliance form in the chaos withstand what was about to unfold? As he played on, fingers trembling yet determined, a singular question loomed large through the clamor: who would emerge as the true victor in this unfolding storm? The figure in the doorway stepped forward, revealing a face half concealed by the shadows. Lights flickered, casting ominous shadows across the room. Davis's breath caught in his throat as recognition hit him. Ethan. The boy who had cruelly tormented them all, the mastermind behind the chaos. "Pack it up, losers!" Ethan shouted, his voice laced with venom. He strode into the room, moving with an air of authority that demanded attention. "You think some pathetic piano can save you? Soft music against hard fists. It's laughable." Davis's fingers faltered, but the boy beside him, the spirit of rebellion, slammed a palm down on the piano. The boldness echoed through the air, reigniting Davis's resolve. He wouldn't let Ethan steal this moment. Not now. Not ever. "Play louder!" the boy shouted, eyes blazing with fervor. Davis complied, determination surging through him. He slammed his fingers against the keys, pouring his heart into every note. The melodic chords surged out, weaving through the chaos, reclaiming the room. The students, pushed to the edges of fear, were beginning to shift. Eyes that had dropped in submission now burned with defiance. One by one, the whispers of courage grew into a collective roar. "We're not afraid of you!" someone screamed, emboldened by the music. Ethan's smirk wavered as the crowd reacted, but he quickly masked it with scorn. "What a joke! This isn't a fairy tale, this is reality." He shoved through the throng, closing in on Davis with sinister intent gleaming in his eyes. Davis could see it now. The anger didn't solely belong to Ethan, it enveloped the entire gathering, festering beneath their skin. In a split second, he realized that the violent uprising had come from a place of deep hurt. They were all fueled by pain. "Fight back!" another voice screamed, rallying the students. The tide was shifting rapidly, fully charged with the rhythm Davis provided. Suddenly, it felt like they were harnessing something greater than themselves. A well-aimed fist flew from the back, grazing Ethan's shoulder. The bully stumbled back, shock breaking through his bravado. "You took it too far," a girl shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. Davis couldn't tell if it was anger or grief that drove her. All he knew was they needed to strike hard and fast before this moment slipped away like sand through their fingers. As Ethan regained his footing, he yelled back, "You want to fight? I'll give it to you." He lunged toward the piano, eyes wide with rage. The chaos morphed into something darker as bodies surged forward, fists raised in defense. In that fleeting moment, Davis heard the notes he played morphing, twisting into a swift, rhythmic heartbeat of rebellion. A direct challenge to the brutality looming before them. But would the courage of the crowd hold against the aggression of those who thrived on pain? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hall, a window shattering somewhere beyond the chaos. Fear clawed at the edges of their resolve. What if the violence escalated beyond control? Davis's fingers hovered over the keys, heart pounding as he searched the crowd. "Stay with me," he pleaded, playing fiercely, praying for their strength to match his. The energy pulsed through the room like a live wire. But how long could this last? Just as he built momentum, the music cut sharply, a wrenching sound pierced through. All eyes turned to Ethan, who had a wild gleam in his eye. "Who's with me?" he shouted, a twisted grin spreading across his face. In that charged moment, Davis's thoughts spiraled. Would they stand united against hate, or would despair swallow them whole? And in an instant, he knew he had to make a choice, one that would either awaken an army of hope or sink them into deeper despair. Would he take the risk, push forward, or falter in the face of true violence? The room held its breath, suspended in time, waiting for his answer. Davis's heart raced as the pressure mounted. He felt every gaze resting on him, the weight of their hopes and fears pushing him deeper into uncertainty. Ethan's figure loomed closer, each step amplified by the pulsing notes of the piano he fought to maintain. Something had to be done. Is this it? Ethan sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. You think a few chords can save you? That you're brave enough to stand against me? Davis's hands stilled for a moment, frozen in doubt. But then he felt it, a spark igniting within him. It wasn't just about music anymore, it was about truth, freedom, and standing tall against oppression. He slammed his fingers back down onto the keys, letting the sound erupt like a battle cry. The power of the music surged through the crowd, their senses electrified. Ethan's bravado began to falter as he met the fierce glances and clenched fists of those around him. It was like watching a dam break, resolve splashing in all directions, overcoming the paralyzing fear. Let us show him who we really are, shouted a voice from the back, invigorated by Davis's relentless performance. Encouraged by the rising tide, the students pushed forward, rallying behind each crashing note, but Ethan wasn't finished. He growled low, blocking the path toward Davis. You think you can win this just by playing a piano? You have no idea how far I'll go to crush you. His words sliced through the air, threatening to dismantle their unity. But the fire of rebellion surged, pouring energy into the room. Students started to clap in rhythm, a chorus of defiance filling the broken hall, drowning out Ethan's threats. Together. A girl shouted, her voice slicing through the cacophony. We're not just fighting for ourselves. This isn't about one person anymore. It's for everyone he's ever hurt. Davis's fingers danced faster over the black and white keys, pouring his heart out into the melody. A new song emerged, pulsating with tension and hope, a symphony of their collective struggles. As he played, he could feel them gathering strength, a tidal wave of solidarity. The rhythm didn't just echo in the air, it resonated in their chests, a unifying heartbeat that grew louder. Ethan, seeing the frenzy build, lashed out. Shut up. You'll regret this. He lunged toward the piano, but before he could reach it, a rush of bodies surged forward, forming a protective barrier around Davis. Adrenaline blasted through the air, a palpable haze that cloaked them in bravery. What are you afraid of? Someone yelled back. This is our moment. The words rang out like a bell, sharpening the tension into something almost tangible. As the crowd pressed forward, they encircled Ethan, their faces reflecting courage and a fierce sense of justice. It was unlike anything Davis had ever seen. In that chaotic whirl, it became clear. This wasn't just about one fight, it was a stand against every wound they all carried, but in the shifts of energy, something felt off. A loud crack echoed again, but it wasn't just a window this time. Shadows danced unnaturally as whispers of danger crept into their bravado. Davis's heart sank as a new fear gripped him. What if this escalated beyond a mere scuffle? What if someone got hurt? Then, just as that thought struck him, the lights above flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. Davis! A voice yelled in panic. Pure chaos swallowed the room, screams twisting in every direction. Davis's fingers slipped from the keys, mind racing. This was no longer just about standing together, it was about survival. What had they awakened? Was this really the dawn of rebellion, or just the prelude to something far worse? As silence enveloped them, a question loomed larger than the fear. Would they rise from the ashes, or would they find themselves trapped in a nightmare they could never escape? The darkness wrapped around them, thick and suffocating. Panic twisted in Davis's gut as he struggled to adjust to the void. Shadows danced in the corners of his vision, and the echoes of fear bounced off the walls, amplifying every breath. Turn on your phones. Someone shouted, the command breaking through the chaos. In an instant, pockets lit up, glow fading into the pervasive shadow. Davis could see their faces now, fearful but determined, eyes glimmering with a wild, feral resolve. But where was Ethan? The sudden silence had cast an even darker shadow. Had he slipped away in the confusion? The uncertainty gnawed at Davis. Stay together. A voice called out, but the crowd murmured anxiously, voices overlapping in a disjointed chorus of fear and confusion. As if the universe had chosen that very moment to punctuate their dread, a blast of light surged back to life, an ominous spotlight flickering back on above the stage. It illuminated Ethan, who stood defiantly, his silhouette cutting through the darkness like a blade. A menacing grin stretched across his face. Did you think you could rally your pathetic little rebellion? You have no idea what you're dealing with. His bravado was now charged with venom, each word dripping with malice. The crowd recoiled, uncertainty fueling their hesitation. You're just a coward hiding behind a piano. He spat, his voice a snarling challenge. Want to see who really has the power here? With a flick of his wrist, Ethan signaled, and a flash of movement swept through the crowd. Davis's blood turned to ice as he recognized the glint of metal in the dim light. A group of Ethan's followers emerged from the shadows, brandishing makeshift weapons, pipes, bats, anything that could be wielded as a tool of intimidation. They advanced, a swirl of chaotic energy igniting the air, mocking the unity the students had formed. Davis's heart raced, every beat a desperate call to action. We can't let him divide us. He urged, his voice fighting to rise above the panic. Remember why we're here. We stand together. But doubt hung heavy. Some students hesitated, glancing at Ethan's advancing squad, trying to gauge the threat versus the resolve they felt just moments before. Get out of my way, Davis. Ethan shouted, pushing through the frightened crowd with an arrogance that felt unbearable. I will end this, and I will do it myself. Suddenly, the lights buzzed and flickered again, plunging them into a swirling chaos of shadows. The air itself felt charged, like a storm stirring just below the surface. Don't fight, someone murmured, as desperate glances darted around, searching for an escape. Davis's eyes darted to the piano behind him, a wellspring of his defiance. Without thinking, he rushed back, not to play for the masses, but to use it as a shield. If they could just turn this moment back against Ethan. But even as he made his way to the beloved instrument, a loud crash echoed. An explosion of bottles shattered against the wall near him, sending shards of glass scattering like rain. A collective gasp rolled through the huddled crowd, followed by cries of shock and horror. Enough! Davis shouted louder, desperation clawing at his throat. He threw his hands up as if to contain the chaos, drawing on all the strength he could muster. We can't let him do this to us. But the question loomed again, heavier than before: how much chaos could they withstand before the storm ripped apart their fragile unity? As his fingers brushed the keys, he could only hope the music would cut through the fear and push back the shadows trying to claim them all. Would it be enough? The breaking point felt closer now than ever. Would they succumb to the darkness, or could they find the light together, fighting against everything that sought to tear them apart? Davis's heart thundered as he pressed a palm against the piano, its surface cool and solid. This was his fortress, his stand against the tide of terror surging forward. He could feel the whispers of his classmates falling away, snatched by fear into the darkness. But he was not about to let Ethan turn their fear into submission. That he let his fingers hover above the keys, anxiety coursing through him. Should he play a soft melody, something soothing and gentle to calm their frayed nerves, or a defiant anthem to rally their spirits? A wave of uncertainty crashed over him, suffocating. He had seen the weapons glinting in the dim light, felt the palpable dread hanging heavy in the air. With a deep breath, he struck the keys. A single note rang out clear and unwavering. It sliced through the tension like a shot in the dark. Davis could feel heads turning, shadows shifting in his direction. As he built the melody, a sense of purpose flowed through him. This was his chance to reclaim the night. Ethan's followers paused, confusion breaking through their intimidation. The haunting notes danced through the air, echoing in the corners of the auditorium, wrapping around the crowd, binding them with invisible threads. The music called to them, urging them to remember their strength, their unity. Come on! Feel it! Davis shouted. We are more than just our fears. We are a force. The music surged, vibrant and alive, a pulsating heartbeat of collective resistance. His classmates began to lean in, their eyes glowing softly in the dim light, curiosity overshadowing fear. Slowly, some started to hum along with the rhythm. The melody flowed, lighting their spirits like flickering candles, but Ethan was not done. "Stop this," he bellowed, anger ripping through his voice. He raised a weapon high above his head, a bat in his hand. "You think this charade will save you?" The crowd hesitated, the spell of the melody breaking. Fear clawed back at their hearts, and Davis could see panic rising again. An overwhelming wave of doubt crashed over him. "Ethan!" Davis shouted, determination lacing his voice. "You think you scare us? You think you can break us down with your threats? You're more fragile than you pretend." There was a moment of silence, pregnant with tension. Ethan's expression cracked, revealing a flicker of doubt. For just an instant, the facade of power crumbled. But it wasn't long before anger hardened his features again. "You think you know how this ends?" Ethan sneered. "You think this music holds any weight against real power?" Davis's fingers flew over the keys, pouring every ounce of hope into the notes. In the back of his mind, a chilling doubt crept in. Would it be enough? Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, the electrical hum buzzing ominously. The crowd collectively held its breath, uncertainty creeping back. Davis could sense the impending danger, the storm Ethan was brewing just beyond the edge of the moment. "Now!" Ethan roared, his followers lunging forward, weapons raised, time slowed as chaos erupted. Shrieks filled the air, drowning the melody he fought so hard to create. Davis pounded out a frantic rhythm, trying to drown out the terror, but the music felt fragile now, slipping through his fingers. What would he do? Cling to hope and defiance, or let it slip away in a moment of darkness? Every second felt like a lifeline stretching thin, teetering on the edge of despair, and then, through the noise, a new sound emerged, a familiar hum carried by the crowd, rising against the turmoil. As students stood strong around him, their voices intermingled with the melody, a glimmer of unity sparked in his chest, but would that unity be enough to withstand the storm headed their way? Just then, a figure broke free from the frightened crowd, and a shocking realization hit Davis harder than any blow. It was Ava, rushing toward him, her face a mask of resolve. "Davis! I've got something to tell you," she yelled above the chaos, eyes locked on his heart skipped. Was she really about to say what he thought she was? Had she found the key to their fate in the very heart of this turmoil? What had she discovered that could change everything? Time was running out, and the fight for their future hung dangerously in the balance. Ava's breath came in quick, jagged bursts as she reached Davis, her eyes wild with urgency. The chaos swirled around them, screams and shouts blending into a cacophony that threatened to drown her out. But she wouldn't be silenced. She had found something, and her voice carried the fervor of a beacon amidst the storm. "Davis!" She shouted again, grabbing his arm as the thud of footsteps pounded the floor nearby. They've got something planned. Ethan's not just here to scare us." "He what?" Davis demanded, trying to hear her over the tumult of noise. "What is it?" "They found a way to trap us. If we don't do something fast, he'll activate it. We'll be trapped in here forever." The weight of her words crashed over him like icy water. Ethereal hope flickered at the edges of his consciousness, but the fears of panic gripped his heart tighter. "How do we stop him, Ava?" Before she could answer, the crowd surged, pushing them back. Davis caught a glimpse of Ethan. The boy was a storm, wild-eyed and brimming with chaotic energy, swinging his bat and rallying his followers with a maniacal glee. He thrived on the panic, the confusion. "Listen!" Davis yelled, his fingers still poised above the keys. "We can't let him take control. We have to stay united." The melody he played wove through the auditorium like a lifeline, but moments of doubt flickered in. Would it be enough against Ethan's ferocity? The lights flickered again, casting alternating shadows that made the room seem haunted. Voices cried out for help, for direction. The music wove a protective cocoon, yet Davis felt the grip of despair curling around him. His classmates' faces turned pale, eyes darting around in fear. "Can you really bring them together with your music?" Ava shouted, her voice tinged with hope and skepticism, just as fear clawed at her heart. Davis's stomach twisted as he considered her question. "If they don't believe it's possible." "I believe." Ava interrupted, her determination cutting through the panic. "But we need to act now." A plan formed. Davis's fingers danced across the piano, gathering momentum. A deeper resonance reverberated through the crowd, sending a ripple of resolve through the horror. The students began to join in again, their voices mingling with the melody, strong and defiant. "Make your voices heard," Davis urged, his passion igniting a fire he hoped could spread. "Sing for our freedom. Our unity will break the chains of his fear." Ava stepped forward, cupping her hands around her mouth. "Everyone. We are more powerful together. Don't let them break us. Fight back with your voices." The merging sounds, the bubbling anthem of hope, surged towards Ethan like a wave. Their melody became a mantra, a rising tide against the cruel disharmony he had spun. Davis could feel the tide of fear start to recede, but Ethan wasn't done yet. "You think your little song can save you?" His furious shout cut through the notes like glass. He threw the bat aside and drew a gleaming object from his pocket, what looked like a detonator, pulsating with ominous red lights. "This ends now." The collective gasp from the crowd echoed around the room, drowning out the music for a split second before it surged again, backed by the force of their defiance. "Davis, now!" Ava yelled, her voice trembling but resolute. "We need to make sure that melody is our last stand." Davis's heart raced. With Ethan poised to unleash havoc, all hope rested on a fragile thread. Peering at Ava, he felt the weight of their fate hanging in the balance. Could music overpower weaponry? Could they break through the storm Ethan had created? The melody reached a fevered pitch, vibrating in their very bones. Yet the pressing danger loomed as Ethan clenched the detonator tighter. With a heart-stopping intensity, Davis knew this was their moment, but would it lead to their salvation or their doom? Davis's fingers flew over the keys one last time, and uncertainty gnawed at him as the crescendo built. In that split instant, as the crowd's voices soared, part of him questioned whether the music could truly drown out the dark intentions hidden in Ethan's hand, and just before the rift was set to unravel, a clear, dark laughter erupted from the shadows, revealing a figure they hadn't seen approaching. "Looks like the fun is just getting started." What had they missed? What other surprises lay just around the corner? In that eye of chaos, the laughter cut through the tension like a hot knife through butter. Davis's heart sank as a figure stepped forward from the shadows, Ethan's older brother, Mason, with his notorious reputation for violence trailing behind him. The air crackled, a palpable charge of dread rippling through the crowd. Mason was trouble in every sense of the word, and now he stood there, grinning like the storm itself, ready to take whatever Ethan had started to a grimmer level. "Put down the detonator, Mason," a voice cried, but it was drowned in the swell of fear surrounding them. Davis felt the rush of voices around him tearing at the threads of resolve. Hope hung by a slender line, and uncertainty pooled deep in his gut. Students trembled as they turned from one monster to the other, desperate for a beacon of strength to lead them through the void, but there, in the chaos, he felt the weight of music. The pulse of his defiance was not broken. Taking a deep breath, he hit the keys harder than ever, igniting a fierce melody that burned through the dimness like a fire in the night. The resonance spread, a tangible warmth that wrapped around them all. "Join me. Find your voice," Davis shouted, rallying those around him. "We can't let them control us. Not now. Not ever." One by one, voices began to rise around him, fragile at first, but then bold, fusing with the melody, their fear transforming into something mighty. They clustered together, a seamless wave of humanity united against the darkness looming before them. "Ava! Keep them focused!" he yelled through the growing commotion as she rallied more students to join in. "We need to drown out the hate." Together, they sang, chords rising like a windstorm, an anthem to push back against the encroaching shadows. And as the crescendo billowed, Davis could see doubt flicker in Mason's eyes, just as it once had in Ethan's. Not so powerful now, were they? Mason huffed, annoyance darkening his features. "You think your little song matters?" He raised the detonator defiantly, a dark shadow looming over the light of their unity. But Davis felt hope stirring. "No!" Ava shouted, thrusting her arm forward, her voice powerful and unyielding against the fear. "This isn't just music, it's our truth. We stand together." The room reverberated, voices weaving around that one comment, "our truth," becoming a shift in energy. Sliding back toward the piano, Davis edged closer. He poured every ounce of strength, every heartbeat into that music, letting it swell and intensify. Light spread from his fingertips, filling the room, transforming fear into determination as it surged. Suddenly, one brave student darted forward, throwing himself against Mason. The two crashed to the ground, flailing arms and legs tangled in a desperate bid for freedom. The detonator flew from Mason's hand, clattering against the cold floor, and a collective gasp rang out through the crowd. Davis's resolve solidified. This was their moment. With the detonator gone and fear retreating in the face of unity, their voices crescendoed higher, weaving a patchwork of harmony strong enough to wrap around the dark intentions in the room. Mason, pushed down by surprise, hissed like a cornered snake. "You think you've won? You're just kids." He spat, scrambling to get back on his feet. "Just kids?" Davis echoed, pouring every ounce of strength into his playing. "No. We are warriors for our dreams. We will not fall." At that moment, the lights flickered back to life, brighter than ever, illuminating the chaos in brilliant color. The crowd erupted, voices harmonizing into a single, ferocious symphony that rode the adrenaline and everlasting roar that overwhelmed every inch of the auditorium. Mason faltered, dread creeping onto his expression. "You can't keep this up forever," he shouted, but the truth was, it didn't matter anymore. With every note played, Davis felt the chains of his past shatter, breaking the weight of expectation and fear. This had become more than just music, it was liberation. Ethan shoved past Mason, realizing the tide had turned. Desperation seeped into his voice. "No! Stop them!" he shrieked, but the crowd rallied, braver than ever, echoing the fight they collectively nurtured. The music soared higher, as if sweeping the very shadows out of the room. The two bullies realized they had not only underestimated Davis but had also misjudged the collective strength of everyone they thought they could dominate, and in that moment, Davis began to see clearly. They were no longer bound by their past, they stood united, no longer afraid to reclaim their voices. The beating of their hope throbbed in every key, every chord he struck. Then, through the clamorous vibrations, a soft stillness settled, soothing yet empowering, bringing with it a finality that marked their victory. The music wrapped around them, a warm embrace relinquishing fear. Mason stumbled back, confusion flooding his features as his influence crumbled. He backed away as whispers of defiance surged forward, spilling from the lips of those who once trembled. Suddenly, everyone stopped and stared. The energy in the room shifted, fearful glances turned resolute. Davis's heart swelled as he recognized the power of their collective spirit. They were heroes in their own right. Amid the chaos, he finally understood the music had saved them all. With one last crescendo, the final notes rang out and the crowd erupted, their voices carrying far beyond the fear that had suffocated them. Ethan and Mason looked at each other and then retreated, the storm they brought dissipating into nothingness. The auditorium, once heavy with torment, now filled with something sacred, hope. The crowd cheered and embraced one another, tears mingling with laughter. Davis exhaled, heart racing but calm. "Thank you," he whispered to Ava, who smiled back, her eyes sparkling with triumph. Together, they had turned their struggle into strength, and in that moment, no longer defined by the darkness of their past. It was their time to shine. As their voices faded into echoes, the weight of the world felt lighter, and the echoes of uncertainty melted away. They had won. They had found themselves, and now, as they turned to face their future, one thing was certain: what happened next depended on every single one of them. Hey, before you leave, make sure to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. You need to subscribe now if you want to know what comes next. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Every click helps keep stories like this alive. And I want to hear from you, so flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of standing together and supporting our community.